Good morning, everyone, and happy Wednesday. My name is Nick Marro with Occupied Fantasy. As always, I'm here to help you break down tonight's NBA DFS slate on both DraftKings and FanDuel. You can find me on Twitter at Nick Marro DFS. If you haven't already, please like the video. Also, subscribe to the channel. That helps us get more free content like this out to you on a regular basis. I'm going to be walking through the slate game by game, team by team. We got a 10-game slate tonight, so there's a lot to get through. If you're not already a member of Occupy Fantasy, check the links in the description below. As a member, you get access to the model you see here, which I'll be using throughout the video, as well as a single lineup builder, a multi lineup builder, a private Discord server full of DFS pros to help you improve your game, which also includes a 30-minute window leading up to each slate lock where you could ask your lineup and slate specific questions. All right, so without DraftKings window up, a FanDuel window up. I'm going to slowly build lineups as we talk through these games. As I already mentioned, there are 10 games on the slate. We have most of the injury reports. There are a couple teams on back to backs. A lot of moving pieces. I'm going to do my best to kind of get you set up for the evening. Obviously, in NBA, things can change throughout the day, so definitely keep an eye on the news. News is pretty much everything in NBA DFS. All right, so there is only one game at 7 o'clock. We got the Nuggets at the Wizards. Just pulling up the spreads here. Nuggets are 7-point favorites on the road. We're looking at a 228.5 point total here. So no significant injury news for Denver. Washington is on a back-to-back. We'll start with Denver. So Denver moving across the country here. I think they did have to travel. Shouldn't matter much though. Didn't play yesterday. Jokic, as always, is one of the best pay-up options on the board. Very expensive. As more value opens up, he'll be easy to get to. But this is an excellent matchup against Washington. Denver will be paced up against a pretty soft defense. They've been pretty terrible on the road for most of the season. But I do think they should be fine here. This is a good matchup. I like Jokic a lot, obviously. Jamal Murray looks fine on both sides. Sub 8K feels a little bit too cheap knowing his upside in this type of matchup. Then other starters like Gordon, Porter, Caldwell Pope, all viable, but no real priority plays there. I will say Murray probably going to draw the most ownership for Washington unless, like I mentioned, more value opens up in some of these other games, in which case Jokic would be worth prioritizing if you can't get to him. I do imagine some of our better value plays are going to be at center, though. So you may not want to fill up that center spot, especially on FanDuel where you only get to use one. But yeah, really good matchup for Denver. Tough not to like them here. Over on the Washington side of things, they are in a back-to-back, so we do not yet have that injury report. Kyle Kuzma was out yesterday. I expect he's going to be out again, which means we can go back to Porzingis and Beal as excellent options. Bradley Beal somehow got in terrible foul trouble. He had five fouls early in the third, fouled out early in the fourth. Really unfortunate because he was a great play on paper. Probably would have got the value pretty easily if he could just stay on the floor. But yeah, as far as tonight goes, not the best matchup for Washington, but again, with Kuzma out, we're going to see extra usage for both Beal and Porzingis. I think they're excellent everywhere. Monte Morris on both sides looks good here as well. He's seeing a boost in usage with Kuzma out of the lineup as the starting point guard. Sub 5K on both sides provides a nice bit of value on a slate where we're kind of lacking it for a 10 gamer. And then Daniel Gafford, boom bust center play, definitely has upside, but again, 10 games, a lot of good center options. I'm not sure you want to use those spots up for someone like Gafford, but in large field tournaments where he's going to be around 1% owned, I think he's a really strong play. And then the last one I got to mention is Denny Avila. He's been coming off the bench. He was outstanding yesterday. Part of that was because Beal was in foul trouble, but at the same time, we've just seen him have massive games with Kuzma out of the lineup, even coming off the bench. Don't be alarmed if you see Kispert starting. That's kind of been the case for most of these games with Kuzma out, but Denny continues to produce. Seeing a lot of ownership over on FanDuel. I think I'll go ahead and pencil him in at 5,200. We can pull him if we find better options in this range. But I like the multi-position eligibility. I like that we're getting him for only 5,200 as well. So just scrolling down, there he is. So yeah, get some Denny in your life. He'd correlate well with a play like Joker if we can find the value to get to him. Um, and then yeah, Porzingis on both sides looks great. Beal on both sides looks great. Morris as well. Gafford as well as secondary options. So a lot to like here for the Wizards. Just don't have that injury report yet. So keep an eye on that. It is the first game on the slate. We will have that news. We will have the lineup. So um, yeah, again, just keep an eye on that one. Moving into the 7:30 window now. Taking a look. I believe it's the Warriors. I'm trying to go in the order of the official injury report, not the odds page I'm looking at. But yeah, we have the Mavericks and the Warriors. Just a second. Mavericks hosting Golden State. The Mavericks are 2-point underdogs at home, looking at a 234.5 point total here. Um, This one's going to be tricky. So Luke is listed as questionable, as is Kyrie. If they're both in, they're both fine options, but at the same time, it's going to be tough to want to prioritize either as pay up options with them both on the floor. Obviously, that cuts into each of their respective usage rates. If Kyrie's in and Luke is out, Kyrie's an excellent play. If Luke is in and Kyrie's out, Luke is an excellent play. I would say proceed with some caution on Luka, though, has he is coming back from an extended period off due to injury, dealing with a left thigh strain, which seems pretty serious, but at the same time, I think they've just been cautious with him. I think if they needed him back right away, he'd probably be in there. But yeah, so my hunch is Luca and Kyrie are both back tonight, which means there's really going to be nothing on Dallas we need to prioritize. On the off chance they're both out, we can go back to Jaden Hardy and Josh Green, whose prices have come down on DK. FanDuel still has Josh Green around 6K flat, which just isn't all that appealing to me. If both of them are out, we could also look at Tim Hardaway Jr. It is good to see more minutes for Christian Wood lately. Maybe he's regaining Jason Kidd's trust, or maybe they just really need offense with Luca and/or Kyrie out of the lineup. But at 6,700 on DK, I don't mind him as a tournament flyer. But really, as this team gets healthy, they're all kind of priced where they should be. It's just going to be tough to prioritize anything here unless we get news that one of the big two in Luca or Kyrie are out. So nothing really on Dallas I'm all that interested in. Over on the Golden State side of things, we got Draymond listed as probable, Iguodala's out, Kevin Looney listed as probable, still no Andrew Wiggins. So another team kind of priced where they should be. I do like the price on Draymond on both sides, 6,300 over on FanDuel, 6K over on DK. He looks good here. Obviously, Clay has a very high ceiling, low floor as he's scoring dependent. Similar can be said for Curry. Obviously, a little bit higher of a floor. When you're paying almost 10K, it can hurt your lineup more if he has an off night. So I like Curry. I like Thompson. It's not a terrible matchup. Dre looks good as far as a point per dollar play. If I'm playing anything from the Warriors, it's probably going to be Draymond Green. But yeah, with Kevin Looney healthy and back in the lineup, I don't think we see him start at center, which is going to cut into his production a bit. If we see Kuminga starting for Wiggins, then he'd be okay here. Don't mind DiVincenzo as a secondary option, but really no priorities for me on Golden State. Obviously, not going to knock anyone getting to Curry or Thompson, and then Green, probably my favorite Warrior, but not something I'm going to pencil in quite yet. If we're kind of having trouble to fill those forward positions, though, he is the type of play I like as a last man in. All right, moving into the next game on the slate now, we have the Pacers at the Toronto Raptors. The Raptors are 9-point favorites at home, looking at a 234.5 point game total here. Pacers, Tyrese Halliburton is questionable, as is Chris Duarte. So Halliburton's been out for a few games. I still don't think we see him back in the lineup tonight, but if he is, there's really nothing to like here for Indiana. If he's out again, though, we can go back to TJ McConnell and Andrew Nemhard as a secondary play. McConnell's been really productive off the bench with Halliburton out of the lineup, kind of running the offense. I'm seeing a big boost in his usage rate, so I'd like him here. And if Halliburton's out, we could look to Buddy Hield, maybe Benedict Mathurin as secondary options. They're cheap enough to consider, really wouldn't be priorities here, regardless of how this news breaks. Just not a great matchup against Toronto. Then in the front court, it looks like Turner's healthy, Jackson's healthy. Jackson's had some big games, but yeah, I'm really never rushing to play him unless we get Miles Turner out of the lineup. So Indiana doesn't look terrible here if Halliburton's out. If Halliburton's in, I probably won't get to much of anything on a 10-game slate. All right, moving over the Toronto side of things, we have Scotty Barnes questionable. So if Barnes is out, that's going to create usage for the other starters: Siakam, Van Fleet, OG, Trent, Podol, all going to look much better. Trent has been a great play lately, but his price has come up, so he's tougher to get to. Siakam's price is down, but he's been pretty inconsistent. If there is a Toronto Raptor I'm interested in, it's probably Fred Van Fleet, just because he has been the most consistent of this group. Jakob Podol, decent center play as well. Not sure I want to use up that center spot for him, though, even in a decent spot against the Pacers. So nothing I love from Toronto, but definitely keep an eye on the news, because if Scotty Barnes is ruled out, that's going to be a boost to all the other starters. Trent, OG, Van Fleet, Siakam will look a lot better than they do right now with Scotty in the lineup. But if Scotty's in, you can play him on DK at 6,500. But really, in summary, there's just nothing I love from this Toronto team. But yeah, I mean, the field feels the same way. So if you do land on a couple pieces from that starting lineup, you're going to get them in low ownership. All right, we got the Knicks at the Heat in the next game. Heat are 2-point favorites at home, just a 224.5 point game total here. Taking a look, Kyle Lowry is questionable, as is Caleb Martin on the Miami side. No significant injury news for the Knicks. All right. So looking at Miami, pretty healthy team, all kind of priced where they should be. I do like the Butler price of 8,400 on DK. That just feels a little bit too cheap. Bam Adebayo as well, just a little bit too cheap at 7,800. So these guys are definitely appealing over on DK. The FanDuel prices are kind of where they should be with high Hero at 73, Bam at 81, and Butler at 95. So if you're going to play Heat tonight, you play both sites. I would probably get to them more on DK. Not the best matchup against the Knicks, but certainly not one we need to fear. And if Kyle Lowry's out again, I do imagine we see Gabe Vincent get the start at point guard. Not something I'd be rushing to get to. Wouldn't hate it as a last man in, but he's been wildly inconsistent, as has Kevin Love, who's been starting. Decent value play, but he's not really seeing close to 30 minutes in any of these starts, so I probably wouldn't get to him. So for me, I like Butler, Bam, and Hero. Bam on both sites, but Butler and Hero more so on DK. Not quite ready to pencil in any of these guys, but I don't think you could go wrong playing any of that big three for the Heat on DraftKings. Over on the Knicks side of the ball, again, as I mentioned, no significant injury news. We got Randall, Brunson, Barrett, all decent plays. Josh Hart coming off the bench has been pretty productive at a thin forward position. Don't mind him at 5,900 over on DK. Really drawing no ownership, which is a bit surprising to me. 6,100 on FanDuel, fine there as well. But again, another team pretty much priced where they should be. Quickly's been decent coming off the bench, just a little bit overpriced for a sixth man, but he's not a terrible play. It's just not a great matchup against Miami. Again, healthy team priced where they should be. Tough matchup defensively. Not a spot I'm really rushing to get to. So yeah, we can move right into the next game. We got a bunch to get through. Moving into this 8 o'clock window now. We got an interesting one here between the Hawks and the Timberwolves. Timberwolves, 4 point favorites at home, 241.5 point game total here. So this is going to be tricky because the Hawks are on a back-to-back. We saw DeJounte Murray out yesterday. If he's out again, that's going to make Trae Young look excellent here. I'm a little bit confused why Trae is not popping in the model. Did I? Oh, I lowered the salary. That's why. Um, so yeah, false alarm on that one. I was wondering if he might be out, but yeah, Trey looks great here. If DeJounte Murray's out again, if Murray is in, I could see getting to either, but neither would really be a priority. DeAndre Hunter's been solid, but obviously much better if Murray's out of the lineup, as are plays like Bogdan Bogdanovic. Um, so yeah, really nothing here for Atlanta. I think you have to force if Murray's in, but if he's out, I could see going back to Bogdan. I could see going back to Hunter. Obviously, Trae Young would be one of the better pay ups on the slate. John Collins as well, just a little bit too cheap for his upside. Don't mind him in tournaments, but tough to prioritize anything here. All that being said, though, this is a great game environment, one of the highest totals on the slate. So I do not like that we don't have this injury report yet, but with it being a back to back, it wouldn't be surprising to see someone rested. So definitely keep an eye on Atlanta. While I'm not really rushing to get to anything from them right now, this is a spot you're going to want to consider as you're building this evening. All right. Over on the Minnesota side of things, we may get Carl Anthony Towns back tonight, which means all the other starters aren't going to look quite as good as they have. Anthony Edwards is listed as questionable. I don't think he's back tonight. If he is, obviously that would cut into the usage of the rest of these starters. But yeah, with Cat back, I mean, he's going to look decent here. I think he's going to be overpriced, though. I can't imagine they're going to want to rush him back. Where is he? Towns. Yeah, 8,300. That is a little cheap for him. But sharing the front court with Gobert, first game back from an injury, I can't imagine they just let him run his full regular minutes. So I don't mind Gobert if Karl Anthony Towns is out. If Anthony Towns is in, I probably won't get to him much. Kyle Anderson, Jada McDaniels, Torian Prince, all decent options here. Prince went off last game. He was much cheaper than he is now. I think he hit 8 threes or something ridiculous like that. Probably won't get to him here tonight, but if you're desperate for value and Edwards is out again, I could see using him. Kyle Anderson, Jada McDaniels, as I mentioned, fine plays. If somehow Gobert and Karl Anthony Towns are out, you're going to want to get to Naz Reid. I think it's more likely than not, though, that both of those center plays are in. So while this is a great game environment against Atlanta, I'm really not rushing to get to anything here. I really like Mike Conley with Anthony Edwards out of the lineup, but his price is up now, 6,400 on DK, 6,500 on FanDuel. I'll still probably get some shares in tournaments, but not a spot I'm necessarily rushing to because they're all kind of priced up for Edwards being out of the lineup. So it's just a little bit tough to get to Minnesota, but this is an excellent game environment. So do not shy away from getting pieces there, even though I'm not prioritizing anything quite yet. All right. Moving into the next game on the slate now, we have the Rockets at the Grizzlies. Grizzlies are 12.5 point favorites at home. Nothing too significant for the Rockets. Jayshawn Tate is out. Ty Washington as well. Back down with the G League. So on Houston, Porter Green, fine guard options. Sengun looks good here as well. Not necessarily a priority, even in a good matchup against Memphis. Obviously, Memphis is a pretty good defensive team, but with both Clark and Adams out, they're really not as tough in the front court defensively as they are on paper. So I don't mind Sengun here. Smith, Green, Porter, all fine, but none of them are really priorities. Seeing a lot of ownership going to Porter over on FanDuel at 7,800. I like him as a guard option, but pushing 25% on a 10-game slate, I don't know that I'm going to get there. KJ Martin is the last man in, is fine on either site. If Terry Eason were to slide into the starting lineup, that would probably take Sengun being out again for that to happen, but he would look excellent. But really, as things stand, tough matchup against Memphis, widespread, not really a spot I'm really looking to get a lot of Rockets in. All right, over on the Memphis side of things, we get interesting for sure. It sounds like John Morant's going to be back tonight. Still no Steven Adams. Dylan Brooks is suspended. Brandon Clark is out. So yeah, if you think Jaw's going to get his full run here, no one's going to want to roster him coming off the league suspension. I mean, you get him at very low ownership in a very soft matchup. So not a terrible tournament play here is Ja Morant. I do like Desmond Bain on both sites, even with Ja back in the lineup. With Dylan Brooks, he's going to see extra usage. He is sub 8K on both sites. A little bit overowned as far as I'm concerned, but I do like him here. Jaren Jackson's fine as well. Like I said before, with Clark and Adams out, this front court's pretty empty right now, which means we can get to Xavier Tillman pretty aggressively. I actually like him better on FanDuel. No surprise there. Kind of coming off a dud game. I'm hoping that kind of lowers his ownership a bit, but at 5,300, he's going to be the starting center. He's going to see the minutes. Again, not only is the starting center out, but their other backup in Clark is out as well. So Tillman looks really good to me. I'll go ahead and pencil him in on FanDuel. David Roddy getting some love, especially on DK, just a little bit too cheap at 3,200. Let me pull him up. With Brooks out, I do think he gets some extended run here. Not necessarily a player you can trust and feel great about, but he is cheap enough, so I don't mind him. But yeah, that ownership just seems too high to me. I mean, I wanted to click him. I really want to start building something on DK for the sake of the video, but 45% for David Roddy, a guy who very rarely even gets over 20 fantasy points, just not something I'm wanting to click as things stand. I'm more likely to just put Bane in there and kind of build from there. But I do have some plays coming up in these next few games that I think we can use over him. So I like the Grizzlies here. If we get word that Morant's limited, you can feel better about playing players like Bane and Jackson. Maybe Tyus Jones continues to get some looks, but with Ja back in the lineup, he's going to be relegated to the backup duty. But yeah, Xavier Tillman on both sites looks really solid here again. Just not a lot of bodies available in that front court. So moving into the next game now, we got the 76ers at the Bulls. 76ers are 3.5 point favorites on the road in Chicago, 221.5 point game total. On the Bulls side of things, Caruso's questionable again. That is really the only piece of significant news. It looks like Javonte Green is back. So we could talk through Chicago quickly. Their whole big three here looks decent. DeMar DeRozan, definitely seeing his price come up, so he's a little bit tougher to get to than he's been. But he's solid on both sides, as is Vooch. Much better on DK, where he's only 7,900. The 93 on FanDuel is really tough for me to stomach. Zach LaVine on both sides, reasonably priced. We're finally seeing him back down in that mid to low 8K range. So I do like LaVine here. Tough matchup against Philly, though, so not necessarily a spot I'm really targeting anything aggressively. If Caruso's out, we're going to see a little bit of bump in usage and minutes for Pat Beverly, but Pat Beverly is never a great fantasy producer, so it would be tough for me to call him a priority here. Over on the Philly side of things, we got James Harden listed as questionable with Achilles soreness. To me, that's a tough injury. I could see them resting him here. If Harden's out, Embiid becomes probably the best pay up option on the slate. I know I mentioned Jokic in the first game. I like him a lot here. I think if you can get to one of those pay up centers, you're going to feel pretty good about your builds tonight. There's also a couple guards I like as well, though. And until we get more value, you're probably only really going to be able to fit one stud, especially on DK. A little bit easier to fit two on FanDuel, but as things stand, love some Embiid, like him better if Harden is out. If Harden's out, we could also go back to Maxey, Tobias Harris, DeAnthony Melton as well. All of them have been priced up though from that last game Harden was out, so they're not as much of a priority as they were, but I would like them all a lot here. So another situation we need to keep an eye on. Again, if Harden's out, Embiid, Maxey, Harris, Melton, all going to see considerable boosts. Could even see some Shake Milton as a punt off the bench, or if he slides in the starting lineup with Harden out, but not something I think you need to force on a 10-game slate. All right, moving into the next game now. We get the Spurs at the Bucks. 17 and a half point total here, or spread here rather, not total. 17 and a half point spread, 237 and a half point game total. The Bucks, no Jay Crowder, no Goran Dragic, no Myers Leonard. Otherwise, they are good to go. The Spurs are on a back-to-back, so that's a situation we're going to have to keep an eye on. If we get Collins and Bassi out again, you could go back to Sandro Magumashvili against his former team. Floating around 5K, had around 37 fantasy points last night on both sites in just 25 or so minutes. So he'd be a solid value play here. Keldon was out last night. I think he's back. I think they just rested him on the front end of the back-to-back. Vassell could be back tonight as well. He was out of the lineup. So we really have to keep an eye on things here. I think they're going to be a much healthier team than they were yesterday, though. So it's going to be really tough to prioritize anything unless we get both Collins and Bassi out, in which case I would like Sandro once again. Otherwise, I don't know. We kind of just have to wait and see on this injury report. It is Greg Popovich. It is kind of a game in the middle of the slate. Maybe leave some room to pivot, but as things stand, I really don't feel like we need to prioritize any Spurs against the Bucks here. Over on the Milwaukee side, obviously massive, massive blowout risk. This is one of the wider spreads we've seen all season. If you can get to Giannis, I think he can get you value or better in 3 quarters, so I don't mind getting to him. Would probably get to Embiid over him if Harden's out and Jokic over both of them as things stand, but he's certainly a strong option here. Drew Holiday is fine, floating around AK. Chris Middleton finally seeing his regular run of minutes. Brook Lopez competing for Defensive Player of the Year. A little bit overpriced now, but I do like him, just not so much on this slate. If we're kind of looking for like blowout run or anything like that, I don't know that you need to play those games on a 10-game slate. But yeah, it's been tough projecting blowouts lately. We actually saw the Spurs team upset the Nuggets, and it seems like they rested everyone yesterday, so they'd be fully healthy and good to go today. So I like Giannis here, but it's tough for me to prioritize him over some of the other studs in what should be closer game environments. All right, moving into the 9 o'clock window now. We have just one game at 9 o'clock. That is Eastern Standard Time. The Jazz hosting the Blazers. Jazz are 4.5 point favorites at home. 234 point game total here. This is a spot we need to look um, closely at. We have Anthony Simons out for the Blazers, as is Jeremy Grant. Nasir Little is questionable as well. So obviously two big pieces out for um, the Blazers in Simons and Grant. Damian Lillard, as a result, is probably my favorite pay up on the slate. Finally, I know we're deep into the slate. I'm going to go ahead and add Dame to my DK build. I'll add him over on FanDuel as well. I mentioned I really like those center plays, but with Simons out, Lillard has seen massive, massive usage, and it's been said that if they don't start winning games quickly, they're just going to bench him for the rest of the season. So I think this is the type of spot we could see Dame go off in a big, big way. So I love Dame on both sides. Probably my favorite play on the entire slate. And then with Jeremy Grant out, we're going to see extra minutes for guys like Trenton Wofford. Cam Reddish is going to see considerable boost in usage with both Grant and Simon's out tonight, so I'll go ahead and pencil Reddish in on both sides as well. He's pretty cheap. Prices, though, this is a healthy team, and they are certainly not. So at 4,500 on DK, that looks excellent to me. And then FanDuel, you get that dual position eligibility. You can play him at shooting guard or small forward. I like him a lot there as well. And yeah, I don't think you need to stop there. I think Trenton Wofford at 5,300 on DK is certainly viable. Like him better on FanDuel, where you could play him at power forward. He's actually power forward only over there at 5,700, but I think he's a strong play there as well. And then Nurkic's fine in the front court. I'm going to take a quick look at Wofford, see if I want to go ahead and add him as a core play as well. But yeah, this Blazers team, probably the best spot to look for value tonight. And it's not really cheap value, but kind of mid-range value. But we've seen some huge games out of Wofford. I think Grant came back last game. Let me just check on that. Um, just looking at minutes more than anything else when I pull up the game logs. Obviously, you shouldn't be using game logs to build your lineups. No, he was out. So I like Watford here. I don't know that you have to force him. I'll go ahead and add him on both sites for now. We get 2 centers on DK, so I think that's fine. But really, really like some Blazers tonight, especially Dame. followed by Reddish, Watford. And then as secondary options, you could go to Eubanks, you could go to Nurkic. They're just a little bit more boom bust. Matisse Thybulle on FanDuel, where you get extra points for blocks and steals, looks pretty good over there as well. A little bit lower owned than Reddish as well. Don't think I want four Blazers, but it is a good game environment against these Utah Jazz. So over for Utah, we got Clarkson still out, no Colin Sexton either. Lauri Markkanen is questionable. So if Lauri's in, he's a really good play here. But if Lauri's out, we're going to look to Taylor Horton Tucker once again. Didn't have a great game last time out with Markkanen out. He didn't close because his shot was very cold. We saw guys like Agbaji go off instead. I think you can get to Chris Dunn here as a point guard coming off the bench. Kellen Horton Tucker is going to get the starter point guard, though. So, regardless of Markkanen's in, I think you could use either of those guys as guard plays. But they're much, much safer if Lauri is out. So, kind of wait and see on that piece of news. 8,800 on FanDuel feels a little bit too cheap. Probably won't get to him much at 9,100 on DK, but he is relatively low owned and he correlates well with all these Blazers plays that we're jamming in. So, certainly a situation to keep an eye on. I like some Utah Jazz pieces here. I can see getting to Agbaji on either site. He's been really effective with the guards out for Utah, but he's finally priced up now, 5K on DK, 4,700 on FanDuel. Certainly more likely to play him on FanDuel than I am on DK. But probably my favorite game on the slate, the Blazers at the Jazz, just going to be a really, really good spot for fantasy with Portland missing a few of their key offensive pieces. All right. We've been making excellent time. We are on the last game of the slate. A little bit surprising how quickly we went. We get the Lakers hosting the Suns at 10 p.m. 229-point game total here. Lakers, Anthony Davis is probable. Still no LeBron. Still no Mo Bamba. We'll start with them. Yeah, so yeah, there's a ton of good payups on this slate. Obviously, we like Joker. We love Embiid. Much better if Harden's out, but he's going to be good regardless. If somehow that Spurs Bucks game stays close, then Giannis will look good here. And then as long as LeBron's out, you can look to Anthony Davis as well. Not a great matchup here against Phoenix, but at the same time, obviously, he has a massive, massive ceiling. D'Angelo Russell scoring dependent, but he's down about 1K or at least 500 plus on both sites, 7,500 on DK, 7,600 over on FanDuel now. Really solid late night hammer piece if you want to kind of play that way. I like him on both sites. Secondary options, Austin Reeves has been outstanding with LeBron out. I like him, but he's kind of priced up, so he's tougher to get to. Malik Beasley is a secondary option. Jared Vanderbilt is a secondary option. Wouldn't rush to get to either, but they're both fine as kind of a last piece in. But the priorities here are certainly Davis if you can afford him. I really like Russell, and then I do like Reeves at low ownership as he is priced up. He has been hitting value kind of surprisingly. Still not a spot I necessarily plan to get too much. All right, then over on Phoenix, we're actually getting some value in this last game. No major surprise there. Let's see. Yeah, so no Kevin Durant, which is not a surprise, but DeAndre Ayton's going to be out here as well again. So we already penciled in Watford on DK. If you want to pay up at center, you could pull Watford. I think Biombo sliding into the starting lineup at 3,700 is going to be some of the better value we see tonight. Just make sure he's starting. If Landell starts over him, you could very easily pivot to Landell. But as things stand, I'll go ahead and pencil in Biombo. A little bit aggressive on FanDuel at 4,800. Like him much better on DK. But we did see him hit value in just 20 minutes last time out. So actually, I'm not going to play him on FanDuel. I'll pull him. We have plenty of pieces here as we're building. I will use him on DK, though, at 3,700. As long as he gets you around 20 fantasy points, you can feel pretty good about that. As long as you're getting to other payups in these other spots. So if you're using a value play like this and he doesn't have a massive ceiling, you just want to make sure that you're getting the most out of your other roster spots. And I think that's something we can do here. But with Ayton out, we're going to see extra usage for both Paul and Booker. I think they're fine anywhere you can afford them. Josh Okogie at a thin small forward position looks fine here. And then Landell is the pivot off of Biombo. If you don't trust Biombo, but Biombo's not as highly owned as I expected he would be here. So, yeah, I don't know that we have to get to Landell much. I'd rather get to Biombo, but both of these centers should see around 24 minutes tonight against a pretty big Lakers team, even without LeBron. So, taking a look at where we are at, let's sort by ownership. So that David Roddy chalk, I'm still not getting too much. I'm kind of gonna wait and see on that. I will add Desmond Bain though. I like the matchup with Houston. 7,600 is a solid price, even with Ja back in the lineup. With Brooks out, he should see enough usage to hit value. Scotty Barnes drawing a lot of ownership, but he's questionable again. If he's out, the other Toronto pieces are going to become more appealing. And then we could play Dre at power forward, right? So I'll go ahead and add Draymond Green at power forward. So we could kind of see what we start with on DK. We got Dame, Reddish, Watford, all from Portland. Don't mind Dre or Bain. Wouldn't really call them like plays you must have, but I do like the prices. And then Biombo as another value piece at center. If you want to pay up for two centers, I'd probably pull Watford and keep Biombo. I just think point per dollar, he's a little bit safer. But yeah, can't go wrong if you're really lacking value. Just going down for both of those spots. Then over on FanDuel, we got Dame, Reddish, and Watford from Portland. Denny Avila with Kyle Kuzma likely out again. Only use Denny if Kuzma's out again. Just keep that in mind. And then Tillman here for Memphis with Clark and Adams out of the lineup. We still have an open center spot. So I do like Biombo over on FanDuel, but 4,800 does feel a bit inflated. Let's check the ownership over on FanDuel. Bain getting a lot of love over there as well. Draymond Green, Jamal Murray, a little bit too cheap on both sites. Monte Morris. Sorting by OF index, we got Dame at the top. Again, my favorite play on the slate. If you just look at his game logs with Simons out of the lineup, or just look at his usage rate with Simons off the floor, he's a much, much better player. Great game environment against Utah. Probably want to run some Utah back if I am going heavy on Portland in single entry lineups. But yeah, love Giannis here. Just a lot of blowout risk. Still think he can get there in three quarters. John Morant looks good, but he is first game back from a suspension, so proceed with some caution. The one thing with him, though, is you are going to get him at extremely low ownership. Just wait and see, though, because maybe we get word that he's going to be limited. Jokic, Doncic, Davis. Probably won't get to Doncic first game back from an injury, but Davis looks great. Jokic looks great. Embiid looks great. Much better if Harden sits, though. And then Steph Curry, where you could get him around 5% on both sides. Certainly an appealing GPP play. So, as always, my name is Nick Marro with Occupy Fantasy. Thanks for tuning in today. 10-game slate tonight, a lot to choose from. Expect more news to break throughout the day. All the more reason to sign up to Occupy. You get access to the model, which updates in real time as that injury news breaks. Follow me on Twitter at Nick Marro DFS. Like the video, subscribe to the channel. Let's have some fun tonight, everyone, and make some money. Take care and good luck.